So Ed, thanks for taking time to interview with me today.
Alan, I'm glad you're here, man.
We're in
Good to
West
see you.
Virginia. Beautiful
Yes, we
place,
are.
beautiful
West by
day.
God, Virginia.
Wonderful view out your back deck here.
Yes, sir.
So here's what I want to know, Ed. A little about you that maybe some of the folks, some of the listeners don't know. Give us some insight. Who is
Sure.
Ed DeCosta?
Yeah, okay, so I have, most of your viewers, listeners probably have no idea who I am. If they do, it's probably because of my partnership with John Maxwell and the John Maxwell team, where I teach sales and marketing and part of the coaching program. But I'm a guy from Boston, born and raised in Boston, met a girl when I was 18, fell in love with her, and been married to her for almost 30 years. I'm a man of faith, got 3 grown kids. So for me, it's about my family and my faith, trying to stay fit at a ripe old age of 53. I'm pretty real. I've been told I'm easy to read. I'm not a poker player. You know, if you play poker with me, I might as well just hand you my wallet, you know, because you can tell what kind of hand I've got one way or the other. But I view that as a strength more than anything, because I don't want to play games with people. I want to be honest. It's hurt me, I guess, a few times. Probably many people can relate to that, where your predisposition towards being honest. I'm not saying I'm more honest than the next person. That's not my point. But sometimes you say something that might ought to have been said another way. Mm-hmm. And even as I've gotten older, I've still retained that. And my wife, she still shakes her head. So I'm just like, I can't believe you just said what you just said. Not that it's inappropriate. It's just most people don't. So that's what I think most people find somewhat remarkable, that I will say some things that they didn't anticipate.
Well, I agree that that's how you come across. As a matter of fact, the first time I ever heard you was at a John Maxwell event. You were speaking, and I was very impressed with your candor, your humor, and just your realness. Yeah. And I think that speaks to who you really are once I've gotten to know you even.
I think everybody wants to view themselves as real, and we're all real people. There's nobody more real than any other person, but I think we put on masks, we play roles, there's normative behaviors, and this is how we behave here. And of course, if you're on the factory floor, or if you're at a church, or if you're in a boardroom, or you're talking to 5-year-olds, you behave differently. But none of those elements of who you are is not real, is not authentic, even if it's very different. So I don't view myself as any more real. I just, on some of the filters that people have where something needs to be said, but they just feel, I'm even hesitating on how to put it into words, Alan, that they just feel like it would be better said by somebody else. Mm-hmm. Whatever filter that is, I don't really have it.
You don't have
that? I don't have that one. So I'll just kind of say it.
Well, so what is something about you that most people would never know?
Let's see, what's something about me that most people don't know? Well, people know I have a dog, and she's laying right behind us. But that I miss the joys of having a dog. I am a dog person, but that's the first dog I've ever owned. And I have learned, as we were talking earlier with Amanda and your guys, I learned about unconditional love from this dog. Now, I've learned it from my wife and my children, and I know what unconditional love is, but I had never truly understood the depth of unconditional love, honestly, until we had a dog for a year. And I realized you can have a rough day, you could be tired, you could be not at your best, and this dog doesn't know, or maybe it does know, but it just loves you. Yeah. And you're going to get that affection. And Linda and I, we've talked about that as a standard. Like when you give your kids, you give your spouse unconditional love, just measure your unconditional love against a dog. Man,
it falls
that's
short.
a high standard. Oh yeah, I think most people, I know I do. I feel like, That's never one time that she looked at me like, you didn't take me out that day that I wanted to go out, so therefore I'm going to withhold something, which is a condition, which is the antithesis of unconditional. So, I don't know that most people would necessarily care about that, but most people don't realize how much I've learned
From the dog.
From the dog.
Wow.
And that's the God's
About
honest
love.
truth. About love.
Unconditional love.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Okay, so you're a coach. Why did you pick that field?
Yeah, so again, I could make it sound like I had this great plan to become a coach. The fact of the matter is, and I'll give you the short version, is I left a corporate career where I was sales and marketing. I was an engineer, then sales and marketing guy, living on the road, 3 young kids. That is a recipe for a tough time for families when you are a road warrior. And I was on the road one time for 17 days in a row. And I came home from a 17-day business trip in Europe and then Asia. And Linda and I had one of those conversations I will never forget. And it weren't a whole lot of words, but we can't have it.
Wow.
Can't have it. And so at that moment, I'd always been entrepreneurial, but I'd never really taken seriously the desire to start my own business. And at that moment, I knew I had to. Because I wasn't going to go into my boss and say, give me a job that doesn't require me to travel, because I'd heard of other people saying that. And I use the analogy, imagine if Tom Brady, if you're not a Boston sports fan, you don't like Tom Brady, but you'll imagine any quarterback, Drew Brees, walks into his manager, his coach, and says, I don't want to play. Cam Newton, he's got the body of a linebacker. If he goes into his coach and says he wants to play middle linebacker, he's got the body for it, but he's not playing middle linebacker. They're paying him to play quarterback.
Right.
And in a corporate job, once you're really good at it, that's what they're paying you to do.
Yeah. So you felt like that wasn't an option.
And it wasn't an option. I knew it wasn't an option. And when I resigned and I'd said, well, I was going to ask you to move me, he was like, I'm not doing that. So I knew it wasn't an option. And so I started consulting, which was very natural. And I had a big network, and I got some consulting gigs. Marketing penetration plans, help some people hire some sales forces. And then one of my first clients, he said he wanted to continue to meet with me. And it was a bit of an Abbott and Costello kind of conversation, because I didn't know what he meant. And the long and the short of it was, he just wanted me to bounce ideas off of. And I did that. And then this term of me being his coach came into my understanding. And I'm talking about 14, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided that would become part of my repertoire. And then I found out I was really good at it. Yeah. That I had learned how to lead and how to be a manager and a director and a VP based upon a coaching model. But Alan, I'd never heard it described using that word. So I was coaching without really knowing that I was coaching. So.
Cool. So it was a little bit of an evolution.
It clearly was an evolution. There's no question about it. It was an evolution. And then I went and got trained. I got certified to be a coach, and I realized that I had some natural coaching tendencies, mainly, just not to be mysterious about it, don't tell people what to do. You're not helping somebody when you're telling them what to do. When you're asking them questions, when you're helping them evolve, when you're equipping them. Best example I've ever heard, and hopefully your audience likes it. Imagine you got a 5th grader in the house. 5th grader struggling with their math homework. You say, give me the math homework. You do the math homework and give it to the 5th grader. Short term, medium term, long term, have you done a good thing for that 5th grader? I think any parent would say, well, in the short term, you're going to make the 5th grader real happy because homework's done. But as a parent, short, medium, long term, you have not helped the child at all, because they got to know that, and they don't know it. And if you give the answers to the people who work for you, you're not equipping them to be self-sufficient and self-reliant, and you're making them addicted to you, and that's not a high level of leadership, as you know.
So, yeah, I totally agree. So what do you feel like your greatest strength, your greatest weakness is?
Yeah, well, my weakness, I talk too fast. I talk too much and I talk too fast. My greatest strength, I think, like so many others, I have a deep appreciation and affection for human beings. And I love seeing the potential, not just in young people. With kids, I think for most people it's pretty easy. You know, when they're struggling with something and they're frustrated, you know, with something they can't do or a situation, as a parent or as an adult, you can see they're going to get through this. You know, Mommy, I'll never ride a bike. You're going to ride a bike. You just don't know you're going to ride a bike. So in my business dealings, to be able to see somebody overcoming an obstacle before they do, and then being able to inspire them to somehow get that idea into their mind that they are going to be able to do it, I find it easy to do that. I find it tremendously satisfying to do that, and gives great meaning to what I do for a living.
So what started out as a career change because you needed to do something different for your family,
Yeah.
15 years later or so, what gives you that passion, or how passionate are you now?
No, I'm just as passionate. I'm just as passionate about it now as I was before, and now, given the opportunities that have been put in my path, and I say that deliberately because, again, a lot of people, when they tell the narrative of their story, they smooth out the rough edges, and it makes it look pretty preordained and pretty planned. And most of the people that I know, the truth of the matter is not. They skip the bad parts. They skip the mistakes. You know, they opened 5 doors and there was nothing there, and then the 6th door was perfect. Well, they don't tell you about the 5 doors. They just tell you about. And I'm not mocking people for doing that. And there's a lot to be said for just, you know, talking about successes. But I think people learn more from your failures. So, you know, bottom line, I'm just as passionate about it now.
So what started out as a reason to help people has continued, first of all, your family, because you said no to the road for the sake of your family.
Mm-hmm.
You said yes to coaching for the sake of your family and the people that you're helping. So how that has evolved, to me, looking on the outside, it's like, okay, it started with helping people, it's still helping people, and to me, you're just passionate about helping people. I know you've really added a lot of value to my life.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, and Alan, and you know, I've shared with you probably more times than is comfortable the weekend that I had down with you and your team. You know, the weekend of the WOW weekend. It was a WOW weekend for me and for my sons, David and Brian. We still talk about it. My sons, we do it on a regular basis. So then we actually, I don't know whether you're going to use this, but this is the truth. We're sitting at this table. So we have Sunday dinner. None of the kids live here anymore. They'll come for Sunday dinner. And my life loves nothing more than just sitting and just having some coffee and dessert and just talking. And my kids, they're my kids too, so they get antsy and they want to move. So we have dinner, and you know, I'll make eye contact with one of my sons, and one of them will say, "We got to go," okay, and that's our Alanism, okay. Let's go do something active, because sitting here and talking and everything is great, but after a while, we gotta go pants in our pants. We got to go do something. So that experience that we had with you guys was life-changing.
Thanks. It was a great time for us. So a little bit of who you are, what you do, and I think the takeaway here for me is I love getting to hear more of the story behind the legend, if you will, and knowing the reason that you started. Although you weren't as clear as you are now, it's still the same reason, and having a why, and that why being about people is inspiring.
And I will tell you this. First of all, I'm no legend, and I get it, and I respect you a lot, but we're regular people, right? We are, and I'm very comfortable with who I am and what I've accomplished. I'm very proud of the things I've accomplished, but I'm very grateful.
Sure.
I'm very grateful for the opportunity to do them and the skills. Some of them take a lot of work to develop. Others, I just could do it. Okay, but I will say this. Even though I am just as fired up about it, and I know many others that are just as fired up about what it is they're doing now as they were then. It's an evolution of our own understanding of it. I couldn't have explained it 15 or 20 or 30 years ago the way I can now, because I've just had more practice thinking about it and speaking to people about it. It's like, well, why did you want to sell? I didn't know why I wanted to sell. I knew I enjoyed it, so it gave me great satisfaction to do it, and I knew they paid me more money, which I liked. And so there was happiness, and Linda wasn't all that unhappy. I mean, look, more money than being an engineer. So, it's happiness and meaning.
Yeah.
Now, I couldn't have put it in that way, and in fact, I wouldn't have really understood the question. Like, what do you mean? Well, I'm just doing it, and I'm good at it, so I make a lot of money. And why even think about it at any deeper level? What's the point? Sure. Now I get it. As an older guy, you realize, no, there is a deeper level. You don't have to think about it that way, but you can.
Okay, so I have 4 rapid fire questions. Just
Yes,
something. First thing, Coke or Pepsi?
Neither one.
Beach or mountains?
Beach, beach for sure. I live in the mountains, but I just love the beach.
Temperature, hot or cold?
I'd rather it be hot.
Okay. So, dog or cat?
Oh, clearly dog. I own 2 cats. They own me. I just open doors for them, and that dog.
So you're definitely a dog guy. Well, there you have it.
No question
So,
about it.
Ed DeCosta, who he is, why he does what he does. Some insight. Thank you.
Good to be with you, man.